What's going on, y'all? It's Michael. Finally back with another video. I got some lighting equipment, so now I can record when it's dark out, which is really the only time that I have time or energy. So possibly an uptick in video output for me. No promises though. So today I'm going to be potentially starting a new series on my channel where I basically talk about brands that are outside of the sort of 10 or so that are very prominently talked about within the YouTube bubble. Because there are a lot of good brands out there. I'm not going to say these are going to be potentially like underappreciated or whatever, like these are still going to be pretty well-known brands, but just things that our little clique doesn't really talk about too much. So before I forget to ask you at the end of the video, drop some suggestions for what you want to see next, some stuff I might be interested in. I just really want this to be a learning experience for me and you. But yeah, just give me some names of the brands, possibly some information that I can use to find out more about them. Whatever. I know y'all will come through with that. Anyway, this first part of the series, I guess, is going to be about a brand called Abasi Rosborough, which is a menswear brand based in New York that explores futurism within tailoring, and they do so with very good ethical values. So, and my values very much align with theirs, and so that is what compels me to come to this topic. So first off, I'm going to sort of go through my introduction to what introduced me to the brand, which was the Bauhaus movement. The thing that I came across that got me sort of interested in the Bauhaus movement was a zinc plate lithograph piece by Joseph Albers, who was a prominent professor and Bauhaus artist at the Bauhaus School. And what it basically was is these series of pieces where basically it's just a bunch of lines sort of creating some texture within the pieces, and he did this through spatial ambiguity and just sort of exploring the lines' relation to each other in order to sort of give this 2D plane some texture. And the mindset that he had behind creating this piece was to create maximum effect from minimum means, and you can see that ideology throughout pretty much all of the things that the Bauhaus influenced since its sort of death, even though you see Bauhaus ideals within every aspect of human life anymore. I forgot to mention the name of the art piece by Joseph Albers, but the particular one was called Study for Graphic Tectonic, open parentheses, Ascension, close parentheses, and that whole series was just called Graphic Tectonic. So moving on, sorry about that. So this piece interested me enough to, like that ideology got me interested enough to look into the Bauhaus more. So I'm going to give y'all a brief history on that before I go any further, because there are some more connections that I'd like to make between the Bauhaus movement and Abasi Rosborough. So the Bauhaus School opened in 1919 under the lead of Walter Gropius, and 1919 was pretty much right after the First World War, and a lot of the combat was done in Germany, so there was a lot of destruction throughout infrastructurally, socially, and traditional German values of functionality sort of stifled any sort of progressiveness or innovation before this sort of clearing of the slate. And with this clearing of the slate, there was a lot of room for innovators in Germany to sort of come together and sort of reimagine traditional German values in relation to the modernist movement that was so prominent at the time. And so the Bauhaus School was created. Walter Gropius was the mastermind behind the Bauhaus movement, and what he did was, with the teachings of the Bauhaus School, he basically wanted to combine the teachings of the schools of the fine arts and the schools of the applied arts. So basically an intersection of the functionality of the applied arts movement's teachings and the modernism of the fine arts teachings. And so keep that little intersection in mind. That's a connection that I'm going to make later on in the video. So one of the biggest products of the Bauhaus movement that sort of correlates with the sustainability problem that we're facing today is, you think about the maximum effect from minimum means ideology, and you look at this manual that was created by Ernst Neufert called Architect's Data. And basically what it was this architectural manual that sort of laid out the ideal dimensions for a room in relation to the average sized human's interactions with the facilities that are traditionally in a room, such as like a sink, dishwasher, toilet, whatever. And it was very meticulous, very ergonomic, really took into account every little detail. And basically what this did was streamline pretty much everything while maintaining the integrity of traditional German values of functionality. And so you see the application of things like these in I watched a few Bauhaus documentaries in and enthrallment with it that mentioned it's this thing called a vertical gym that they have, and I believe it was either Brazil or Colombia. I think it was Brazil though, where it was this very impoverished community with houses just stacked on top of each other. A lot of crime, very hard to get around, and basically what they did in this community was they built a vertical gym, which is just a gymnasium with several floors for different activities to sort of just get people off the streets and also like improve health in the area. I don't know, you're gonna have to watch the documentary, I'll link it below. Maximizing the amount of use that you can get out of a small area, things like that. And you think about these things and you think about how the fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the world. You sort of start to see where these ideologies can be applied to the fashion industry's issues. Maximizing effect with minimum means. You know, we've got this ridiculous output of fast fashion where you get these shitty t-shirts that you can wear 2-3 times before they start falling apart, and you just see all the wastefulness of things being thrown away, things being coming in and out of people's wardrobe, just a lot of clothing movement that is very unnecessary and really needs to be sort of flipped on its head. And so with this, it sort of lays out like a solution to this problem with the ideologies, at least if you keep these things in mind and sort of strive towards them as you produce your clothing or even as you consume it. You can see where connections can be drawn and issues can be solved. So thinking about these solutions, I decided there's got to be a brand out there that thinks the same way I do, and I came across Abasi Rosborough. My first encounter with them was one of my favorite podcasts called Blamo. It's a menswear podcast. You should check it out. The host is very nice. But yeah, he had the co-founders of Abasi Rosborough on, and it was a great episode. I became very interested in it, so I looked more into it. So that's how I found it. Now I'm going to explain the brand, I guess. I'm going to start off with how it started, just so you get an idea of the roots of this brand. So the first co-founder that I'm going to talk about is Greg Rosborough. He played basketball at Arizona State while studying business, and his interest in fashion sort of popped off whenever he went to New York for a basketball tournament, and he just became enthralled with the style of the people that were walking down the streets, the clothes in the windows. He just took up a big interest in it. And so upon his graduation, he took this interest in clothes and decided to attend FIT studying menswear. And I'm going to flip-flop between co-founders several times just so I can sort of get the timeline straightened out. So I'm going to segue over into the other co-founder right now, him being Abasi. So he spent 6 years in the military where he sort of traveled overseas and got to see a lot of different cultures. And in seeing all these cultures, he became very interested in the way that these different cultures dressed and sort of decided to adorn themselves. And so during his deployment, when he was in the Netherlands, he decided to take a sewing class, and he ended up being in a class with a bunch of middle-aged Dutch women where he was one of the only ones who spoke English, and that's where he learned how to sew. So after he got out of the military, he went back to New York and attended FIT studying menswear, and that's where him and Greg Rosborough met. They finished their schooling, went their separate ways. Greg Rosborough went to Ralph Lauren Purple Label, which is a great place to learn, I'd imagine, especially if you got to meet Ralph Lauren himself. So working for Ralph Lauren Purple Label, you can probably see this for yourself, but he described that working experience as sort of just like going around the country and sort of sourcing vintage pieces just to reference them, just sort of going in the past and trying to sort of translate it into something modern, which I can imagine would be very tiresome. One particular experience that he mentions is that he was talking to a tailor at Ralph Lauren, and he asked what they thought the suit would look like 50 years from now, and they laughed, saying that the suit's perfect, it's never going to change. Those two sort of points got him pretty tired of it. One day he was on a flight and he saw a flight attendant with a suit jacket on have to take his jacket off just to put a bag in the overhead compartment. And all of this sort of built up. He realized, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, and this is never going to change. Like, what's the point of this? And there are blatant design flaws within the suit. So why is it considered perfect? People are just settling for that. And so that birthed the idea of what eventually became Abasi Rosborough. After Abasi graduated, he went to work for Engineered Garments. And working at Engineered Garments under Daiki Suzuki, he gained a real appreciation for the construction of garments and their structural integrity, because as our little YouTube bubble knows, they make very good product. So when Rosborough decided to sort of start his own thing, he called up Abdul. They got together for lunch, mentioned the idea of Abasi Rosborough, and that's where it was born. So that leads us to what Abasi Rosborough is today. So when they first started to make patterns and whatnot for the brand, basically what they did was they put suits on each other. They sort of twisted and, raised their shoulders and whatnot, and they marked the areas that were, becoming very stressed, stretching, weren't allowing the body to move freely, had sort of limited the range of motion and whatnot. So in these areas, they would add panels to sort of give more room, or they would use knit fabrics rather than fully using woven fabrics all throughout the garments. And this would allow for way more range of motion, allowing for the wearer to actually wear the garment rather than the garment wearing the wearer, if that makes sense. Because with a traditional suit, you're sort of at the whim for the range of motion that it allows. So obviously they used a lot of anatomical influences, and they created this very ergonomic design, which you go back and look at the Newfort manual and you see sort of the same idea being born. This very streamlined, functional garment for you to wear with the structural integrity of traditional suiting that you learn in the menswear program at FIT, that you learn at Ralph Lauren Purple Label, that you learn at Engineered Garments, all sort of forming together, creating an intersection of functionality as well as modernity. The structural influences that they drew from the Bauhaus movement don't end there. They mentioned that a very famous Bauhaus architect, Zaha Hadid, also highly influences their designs, as well as Dieter Rams, who designed a lot of homewares that are pretty iconic within the Bauhaus movement. So now I'm going to sort of speak on the maximum effect from minimum means connection that I mentioned earlier on, and that's with the fabrics that they use to create these garments. As far as I know, they use 100%, like all of their garments are made from dead stock fabric. Dead stock fabrics are fabrics that were milled for other companies' products that didn't get used on the in the production line. So it's basically the excess, and it gets pretty much just bolted up and thrown on a shelf in a warehouse, wherever. And using these fabrics is more sustainable than using organic stuff, because it's using things that have already been made. Like, you don't even have to put any effort into milling this stuff anymore. It's just already there for you. I would say the only more sustainable form of production is upcycling, which is using clothes that have already been used. Because this yardage is just excess, you don't really have the option to create more of it, so most of their pieces are made in runs of 15. I'm not sure if that's 15 total or 15 of each size. I would probably say it's each size. But yeah, minimum means shit that's already been made. They don't have to even produce anymore. Maximum effect, they're literally pushing forward the ideas of traditional modern menswear. Now I'm going to talk about a piece of theirs that I picked up on the Essence sale. It's going to be me from the future because my dumbass left it at my mom's house over the holidays. What's going on, y'all? Coming to y'all from the next decade. Hope y'all had a good holiday season. So yeah, let's just get into talking about this piece. I picked this up on the Essence sale for like 40% off. Basically what it is, it's called the Black Arc Kimono Cardigan. It's basically this lightweight cotton sateen, black dead stock fabric throughout most of it. But on the underarm panels, there's this black ribbed knit cotton, which not only the extra paneling, which stretches to the back and to the front, it also provides the flexibility that a ribbed knit provides, given that it is the most stretchy knit. So like I said before, with these garments they combine woven materials with knit materials, and what that does, knit materials are much more stretchy than woven materials, so in some cases it might not free up the range of motion as much, but more so it allows you to like move around without your garment like tearing. So it adds that little bit of stretch that you need to be able to be a little bit more mobile. Pockets on the side, very utilitarian. Darts on the shoulders to provide a little bit of structure. Belt closure on the side. One of the main things that really inspired me to get this, I had my eyes on a Robert Geller jacket a few years back that had a very similar closure, and that's what really sold me on this. But you can undo this and just wear it like that. Still a look, I guess, but other than that, you can button it up right here and just sort of have it like that. Inner pockets, Lots of storage, very utilitarian, and this is an example of the use of Abasi's travel amongst the world and appreciation for other cultures. The kimono is a piece of clothing that a lot of Eastern cultures value very heavily for its structural integrity. What they've done with this is sort of take that integrity and translate it into something modern, and in my opinion they do so without appropriating the culture because they still maintain the structural integrity that one needs to take into account in order to successfully execute a garment of this quality. Taking a look under the hood here, all their clothing has a leather label, Abasi Rosborough embossed, and underneath it, I can't remember where I saw the video, but Abasi and Rosborough both were cutting these labels themselves and taking a Sharpie and marking the size. This is from the Autumn/Winter 19 Paradigm collection, and it's an edition of 15, like I said before. One thing that I forgot to mention earlier about the structural integrity of the clothes that they make. Most of their clothing is made out of natural fibers, so cotton, linen, wool, silk, because cellulose and protein fibers tend not to break down over time as easily as synthetic fibers do. Synthetic fibers tend to dry out a lot easier, whereas protein and cellulose fibers tend to maintain their structure better over time, and they also take less of a toll on the environment to create. So yeah, great piece of clothing. Moving on. Going forward with this brand, I would like to see them incorporate, like over the past decade, gender lines have very much been blurred, so I really want to see how they incorporate that in their designs, because as futuristic as it is, it's still very masculine. But they've really sort of laid out the blueprint for how a brand should be structured today ideologically, and so I think they are sort of pioneers in that regard. And we're going to see a lot more brands like them pop up in the future, so I think you should very much pay attention to them, because I will be too. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be trying to get an internship there, so wish me luck with that. Hopefully they see this video. And yeah, I think that's all I've got on that. So like I said before, new series. Let me know any more brands that you'd like to see me talk about, that you think that I would be interested in, something that you think that I would identify with. As you can see, I got a ring light on. Makeup tutorials coming soon, I guess. I got some new lighting, so now I can record whenever it's dark out, which is really the only time that I have time or energy to do so. I don't want to promise like a consistent video output, but I've been wanting to record pretty badly lately, and I just don't have the time anymore while it's still light out, so you should see more from me. Also, if you want to hear more about this topic, I wrote a way more articulate essay that I actually put the whole thing up on my Instagram if you want to go read that. My Instagram is @Tandeur, Tandeur, if you want to follow me there. Last thing, I guess, one of my good friends, Taylor, released an EP. I would not be advocating for it if I didn't genuinely enjoy it. I had it on repeat for a while once it came out, but I don't know if any of you all are familiar with Jack Harlow, but he has a feature on there as well as a few other very talented Louisville artists, so please go check out that tape. I'm gonna link it down below, iTunes and Spotify. So yeah, Streamfish, it's the name of the EP. Follow me on Instagram @Tandeur, Tandeur, like I said before, and have a good day. Thanks for watching.
Set the straight man.